Brazilian Grand Prix.
F1 driver ratings.
Tommy, I have a feeling we're in for a good one, a very controversial one probably, and I think that everybody is going to have a great time.
I think they're much more fun when we have a sprint weekend and it's more chaotic and there's going to be some disagreements because we all pick the same thing. It would be so boring.
It would be very boring. Life would be incredibly dull if we all agreed and we all have our own opinions, and that is so wonderful to know and remind everyone, isn't it? Right, let's get straight into it and begin with Gabriel Bortoleto. Started the sprint in 14th, did not finish. Started the main race in 18th, did not finish. I am really sorry for what I'm about to put down on the board for Gabriel Bortoleto, but it is a 1 out of 10. Gabby, I am sorry. He crashed out of both competitive races. In the sprint, it was a massive impact. I want to echo once again what I've said before and what Tommy said before, that we're so happy that he walked away from that unscathed. But it was driver error. You know, he's gone for a move on a slippery track with DRS still open, which of course makes the rear light. And that's the reason why he lost the car. So that is down to Gabriel. And then you go to the main race. And as much as, again, we want to see him do well. A lot of people wanted to see him do well at his home race. But that doesn't mean that we're going to give him any higher of a grade because of what we wished he could have achieved in Brazil. And again, DNF'd because he was very, very optimistic to try and go around the outside of Lance Stroll. Yes, Lance moves slightly over to the left, but realistically, Gabby shouldn't be going for that move anyway. So very much a sad weekend that I'm sure he'll want to forget, and a rookie weekend as well. Probably his biggest rookie mistake prone weekend we've seen from him.
Definitely. I've gone for a 1 out of 10 as well. And we'll also echo your apology because it's so disappointing and it's so sad to give him such a poor grade. But, you know, it hasn't gone well for him at all. The crash was his fault in the sprint. The crash was his fault in the main race as well. So has to be a 1 out of 10.
The fans, they felt a little bit more sorry for Bortoleto. Gave him a 3 out of 10, which I think is very lenient. Nico Hülkenberg started the sprint in 10th, finished 15th. Started the main race in 10th, finished 9th.
I have gone for an 8 out of 10 for Nico Hülkenberg. He's got a couple of points in the Sauber, which it feels like the Sauber, they went through that amazing run, didn't they, in the middle of the season where they looked like a really good car, and it doesn't feel like it maybe more recently, but Hülkenberg's done a really good job this weekend, particularly in qualifying to get into Q3 both times. So yeah, an impressive weekend for Hülkenberg and a couple of points to carry on into the season.
I've also gone for an 8 out of 10 for Nico. Back-to-back Q3 appearances, of course with SQ3 and Q3, which is an awesome job from him. He has struggled in qualifying this year, and then to score a couple of points, he was very much in the mix. Did a brilliant soft stint in the race. He pitted for softs on lap 36 and did a one-stop strategy. So he made something work which not a lot of people thought was possible, and I think he's fully deserving of an 8 out of 10. The fans gave him a 7 out of 10. Alex Albon started the sprint in 12th, finished 17th. Started the main race in 12th, finished 11th. I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Alex Albon. A reasonably anonymous weekend, it has to be said. The sprint was obviously poor. Dropped down the order after Bortoleto's crash. He did pick up some of Bortoleto's wing as well, which of course was pretty unlucky on his part. But then again, in the race as well, narrowly misses out. Of course, 11th doesn't look great on paper, just missing out, and also how close that midfield pack was. But Williams have been pretty good, and it has to be said that I expected in a race like that and a sprint weekend like that for Alex Albon to score points, but he did not, so it's a 5.
I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Alex Albon. I think 5 is incredibly harsh, personally. He was running in the top 10 in the sprint, missed out, obviously, until that collision with Bortoleto, which wasn't his fault, and then missed out on points by the tiniest margin when it was a very closely contested midfield. So I feel like he deserves some credit for that, because I don't think Williams were particularly great this weekend.
Okay, interesting. No points for top 10 in the sprint, but there you go.
I know, but 5 is incredibly harsh.
It's a Williams. This isn't a Sauber. The Williams is a pretty good car, in my opinion, but clearly not in Tommy's. The fans gave Alex Albon a 5 out of 10. Carlos Sainz started from the pit lane for the sprint and finished 14th. Started the main race from 15th, finished 13th.
I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz. I do think this was just a pretty average performance from Sainz. Obviously got contact at the start of the main race with Lewis Hamilton, so it wasn't going to go well from there. But yeah, one to forget for Carlos Sainz after he's had a much better run of form recently.
I've gone for a 5 out of 10 as well for Carlos. Can't really separate Albon and him too much. Of course, Carlos started from the pit lane in the sprint, so it was pretty much done and dusted for him. And then in the main race, couldn't really do much about Hamilton, and then of course picked up damage, which put him on the back foot. Had a slow pit stop as well. So it was just an absolute disaster for the pair of them, really, at Williams. And, it's not really performances we expect from a team that has been on the resurgence this year. The fans gave Carlos a 5 as well. Isaac Hadjar started the sprint in 9th, finished the sprint in 10th, started the main race in 5th and finished 8th. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Isaac Hadjar. I think it was kind of a missed opportunity in some ways. Of course, he started the main race from 5th. He said he was sleeping in that first stint and clearly wasn't very happy with his performance in that, and then was very much just caught up in the massive Liam Lawson train. It was pretty chaotic for sure in that. The sprint was reasonably good, of course, finishing 10th, but there was a bit of chaos around him. The V-Carb maybe not as good as it's weird. It's such a strange weekend for V-Carb where you kind of thought, maybe they're not that quick. Actually, they've qualified really well for the main race. It was just a bizarre one. But I think 7 out of 10 accurately represents a good weekend for Hadjar, scoring some points, but I also feel like there was more in the table, and he also believed that after starting 5th for the main one.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Hadjar. I think he did have more on the table, but I also think it's a very solid weekend from him. 2 great qualifying sessions, particularly in the main race. And obviously he didn't finish ahead of Liam Lawson. He was doing an absolutely crazy strategy, which we'll talk about next. But I think it's a pretty solid and decent race from weekend all round from Hadjar.
Yep, solid weekend for Isaac. A 7 out of 10 from the fans as well for him. Liam Lawson started the sprint in 17th, finished 16th, started the main race in 7th, finished 7th.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Liam Lawson. Obviously, the sprint was poor, poor qualifying. Had that collision with Behrman, which I will, continue to say I think was harsh for him to get the penalty. Not that it made any difference anyway, he wasn't going to score a point. But in the main race, my word, him doing that strategy was absolutely insane, to go 52 laps and keep the entire field basically all the way down to Stroll in 16th behind him in one enormous DRS train, probably one of the biggest DRS trains we've ever seen. And I think Lawson can be very happy with his drive and some good points for V-Carb.
Okay, I was deliberating whether it be a 7 or an 8, but you've convinced me with the fact that he's pulled a ridiculous strategy out the hat to score some good points. So I'll give Liam Lawson an 8 out of 10. Yeah, he's pulled off a miracle strategy there, and to hold them back is pretty mad. He wasn't able to do that in the sprint. I remember he lost quite a few positions. Of course, had a bit of damage, I think, as well. After the contact, but in the main race, everyone wrote off can Max hold off Lando and things like that, and Lawson was holding off about 8 different cars and had the most ridiculous train behind him. So well done, Lawson, a very good drive from you, and the fans gave him an 8 as well. Ollie Behrman started the sprint in 15th, finished 12th, started the main race in 8th, finished 6th. This one is difficult, but I am going to go for a 9 out of 10 for Ollie Behrman this weekend. If it was just the Sunday race, I would say for sure that is a 10 out of 10 drive, but I kind of have to dock him a tiny bit just due to what happened in the sprint, squeezing Liam Lawson onto the grass, of course, picking up a penalty point, and it's not exactly a flawless weekend. However, his Sunday drive was brilliant, and not to take anything away from him for that. And the absolute beast that Ollie Behrman is becoming, I'm very excited to see. It narrowly misses out on a 10. It's a 9 from me.
I think it's definitely a 9 out of 10. The sprint was obviously disappointing. He picked up another penalty point as well, which is obviously a difficult one for him. And then the main qualifying, I think he had a little bit more in him, which is crazy to think about Ocon qualified and to think he's put a Haas in 8th. But I do think there was generally even more pace in that car and what he's managed to do this weekend. But I don't want to end on a bad note because, my word, his race was absolutely brilliant. He was so far clear of all the other midfielders. And boy, is he just driving so well at the moment. And understandably, getting and well-deserved praise as well.
Well done, Ollie Behrman. The fans gave him a 9 out of 10 as well. Esteban Ocon started the sprint in 18th, finished 11th. Started the main race from the pit lane and finished 12th.
I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon. He had a very unlucky puncture just before the safety car came in, which you never know. May have got him points because, of course, he finished 12th. He, of course, wasn't on Ollie Behrman's pace, particularly, really struggling in qualifying again. But he had a good race and was quite unfortunate, so that's why I've gone for a 6.
I've also gone for a 6 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon. Completely echo what you were saying, that he got unlucky with the puncture. Of course, Max was able to take advantage of the fact that the VSC was out there to get a cheaper pit stop. But for Ocon, it didn't work out for him. He lost 10 or so seconds, he said, after the race. And I mean, you just saw how close it was at the end with all those midfielders. So it definitely cost him points. Still not close to Ollie Behrman. Ollie Behrman was a very comfortable P6, but Ocon should have, in theory, scored some points without that bad luck. So it's a 6 out of 10 from me. The fans gave him a 5. Franco Colapinto started the sprint in 16th, did not finish. Started the main race in 16th, finished 15th. I'm going to lock in a 4 out of 10 for Franco Colapinto. Of course, made that mistake in the sprint, albeit, you have to factor in that other drivers also made a mistake on exactly the same lap, and Colapinto is a rookie. But then also in the main race and just main weekend, absolutely nowhere near Gasly, and that's the reason why I'm giving him a 4 as opposed to anything higher, or an anonymous 5 as we like to give, because Gasly was by no means anonymous and showing that, for whatever reason, Gasly was like, okay, I can now drive this dustbin. Whereas Franco Colapinto was kind of almost doing exactly what we've seen for most of this season with the Alpine. So I've gone for a 4.
I've gone for a 4 as well for Franco Colapinto. He didn't have much pace, Colapinto, and of course had crashed out. I'm not making excuses for him, but you do wonder, in a similar vein to Bortoletto, I know it's not exactly his home Grand Prix, but he has a lot of fans there from neighbouring Argentina, and I wonder if, maybe a bit too eager to impress, overdriving the car perhaps. It's a poor weekend for Colapinto after, he got his contract for next year. And I think well-deserved, but this weekend was not good for him.
No, it certainly was not. The fans gave Franco a 5 out of 10. Pierre Gasly started the sprint in 13th, finished 8th. Started the main race in 9th, finished 10th.
I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly. It's not like a 10 out of 10 absolute worldy drive, because I think the Alpine didn't look this weekend, even in Colapinto's hands, who I know did poorly, but it didn't look like a Mexico or something where they were like an F2 car and they were absolutely miles behind. But that being said, Gasly has delivered points, which is so hard to come by, particularly for Alpine, in both the sprint and the race. So he deserves a huge amount of credit for it. So that's why I've gone for a 9.
I've also gone for a 9 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly. I couldn't give him a 10 as much as I think there was definitely a 10 performance in him this weekend. Just maybe missing out on the Sunday race. Of course, he was fighting Hadjar quite a lot. Hadjar kept getting him back. So there was an opportunity for some more points. Had he finished maybe another 8th place in the main race, he probably would have got a 10 out of 10 for me, because that Alpine has been utterly dire this year. So well done to Pierre Gasly. I hope to see more performances like that, because it's been far too long since we've seen him fighting for the points. The fans gave him an 8 out of 10. Lance Stroll started the sprint in 7th, finished 9th, started the main race in 14th, finished 16th. I have gone for a whopping 5 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. Just a very mediocre race. Of course, got hit by Yuki, which sent him backwards. I mean, he's fighting Yuki Tsunoda anyway, which kind of shows you exactly where he was sort of fighting for. So there was nothing really of note for Lance, even up until that point.
I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Lance Stroll as well. He's finished the sprint okay. Obviously didn't get a point, and he lost out to Gasly on literally the final, like right near the end. I think it's a couple of laps to go. And he sort of mentioned that it was because his soft tyres were gone, but of course Gasly was on the soft tyre anyway. So yeah, in the main race, of course, Aston looked a lot poorer. They could not continue that pace at all going into the main race. But I can't downgrade Stroll. I don't think it's like a disastrous weekend because he's been punted by Yuki Tsunoda. And finished on the back of that absolutely enormous train. So 6 seconds away from a point, but in 16th is quite a bizarre situation.
It was 6 seconds away from 7th, wasn't he?
Sorry, 7th.
Yeah, I was going to say a point was closer than that. The fans gave Lance Stroll a 5 out of 10. Fernando Alonso started the sprint in 5th, finished 6th, started the main race in 11th, finished 14th.
I have gone for a 7 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso. I think his race, of course, was certainly not great. He didn't do all that. Aston Martin looked like they struggled a lot more. But the reason it's a 7 is because he's had a brilliant sprint race, one of the stars of the sprint, actually. And while the sprint doesn't, of course, it depends how much you put into the sprint. If you take it as a whole weekend, he scored 3 points for Aston Martin, which, this is a difficult car and they've not really scored a huge amount of points this season. So that's why I've gone for a 7 for Alonso.
I've also gone for a 7 out of 10. I was close to a 6, but I've gone for a 7. His Sunday was pretty dreadful. Started on the hard tyres, wasn't able to make that work. It's weird, isn't it, how we sometimes weight driver ratings in terms of the sprint. And I think it's when the midfield cars, the ones that maybe you don't expect to score many points, are able to pull out something in the sprint race. We don't tend to usually put too much focus on the sprint unless something amazing happens. Look, it's the way you see it, right? And it's the beauty of how we go about these grades, is that some people will understand them, some people won't. But I think that qualifying 5th for the sprint and finishing 6th is a phenomenal drive from Fernando, and sadly for him, of course, nowhere near on the Sunday, but you have to give a nod to that, and it feels as though 6 is too harsh for the fact that he scored 3 points. So I get it, Tommy. You're not just
you can't give him one higher than Stroll, who didn't get points in the sprint and finished behind him.
Yeah,
but unless you're the fans, of course.
There you go. The fans gave Fernando Alonso a 6 out of 10. Kimi Antonelli started the sprint in 2nd, finished 2nd. Started the main race in 2nd, finished 2nd. I have gone for a 10 out of 10. A very easy 10 out of 10 for Kimi Antonelli this weekend. Didn't get pole in anything, didn't win anything, but my goodness gracious me, the consistency of Kimi Antonelli this weekend was truly astonishing. We've seen glimmers of the Antonelli that Toto Wolff sees in the future this season, and this was absolutely the best weekend from Kimi Antonelli. Yes, we've had sprint poles in Miami and things like this, but in terms of just every single session turning up, that is what Antonelli did. He outperformed George Russell, which is not something we've seen all too often this year, and it's the easiest 10 I can possibly give.
Agreed. I've gone for a 10 out of 10 for Kimi Antonelli as well. Absolutely brilliant weekend from him, his best weekend in F1 comfortably. The fact that he managed to deliver it in a sprint on a circuit he's not driven at before. And, Lando was unstoppable this weekend and won everything. And if you take him out of the equation, the best of the rest in every single session was Kimi Antonelli. Front row of the grid, finishing 2nd in both the sprint and the main race. And I think the most impressive thing is that, he has just looked so comfortably quicker than George Russell all weekend. And I think that's why he deserves a huge amount of credit, because, it's not something he's been able to do. So impressed by Antonelli. Long may it continue, and long may he continue to smash it in countries with the food colouring in there that he loves, that makes him amazing.
I love that we keep mentioning that, and then some people have absolutely no idea what we're talking about.
They will know, it's everywhere. I've seen it everywhere now, the fact that it's continued.
The fans, unsurprisingly, have gone for a 10 out of 10 for Kimi Antonelli as well. George Russell started the sprint in 4th, finished 3rd, started the main race in 6th, finished 4th.
I have gone for... I am literally about to change it on the fly to an 8 out of 10. I think it's between a 7 and an 8, but I do think I may be more inclined to give him a 7 because it's George Russell and he's been beaten by Antonelli. But when I look at his actual results of a third and fourth, it's certainly not bad at all. George, if that's a bad weekend for George, he's doing very, very well this year, isn't he? So yeah, a decent result, but I expected more from him. Plenty of points, but sadly for him, he's no longer in the title race.
He is no longer in the title race. Was he ever in the title race? Mathematically now out of it. I've gone for an 8 out of 10. I would have questioned you, Tommy, had you given him a 7, because yes, he was a little bit mystified as to why he was...
So 7.6.
No. Put your decimal places in the bin. Look, yes, he was outperformed by Kimi Antonelli, but sometimes you just have to give props to a driver, and I think Antonelli just locked in this weekend, and you just have to give him a 10 out of 10. That doesn't necessarily mean George deserves a 6 because he got beaten by his rookie teammate. George finishing third and fourth, still being somewhere nearby. It's not like he finished 30 seconds behind his teammate in any of the sessions. So yeah, it's an 8 out of 10 for George. He'll be scratching his head a little bit, but look, we're coming up to Vegas next, where Mercedes will have, I think, be very strong once again, and he'll look to bounce back there. The fans gave George a 7 out of 10. Yuki Tsunoda started the sprint from the pit lane, finished 13th. Started the main race in 17th, finished 17th. It's always fun, isn't it, grading Yuki Tsunoda? I'm going to go for a 3 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda. It feels harsh and horrible every time I say it, but he was 17th, plumb last, had a fight with Lance Stroll and lost and punted him round. The only reason it's not lower than a 3, because it is another disaster weekend while his teammate is romping through the field from the pit lane to finish on the podium, is the fact that there were no major changes that were made on Yuki Tsunoda's car as opposed to Max's going into Sunday. They've clearly learnt something. They've clearly figured something out, Red Bull, to help Max's car. But Yuki was sort of stuck with the disaster setup from the beginning of the weekend. And yeah, I do feel very sorry for him, because he had the same setup as what happened when they were both knocked out in Q1 for the main race. So it's still not great. It's still a 3 out of 10, but I bet he's just kind of wanting the season to be over at this point. I can't imagine Yuki's having much fun.
Probably not wanting the season to be over, because it means he's probably going to be out of Formula One. But I know what you mean in terms of just it's gone so bad for him. I've gone for a 2 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda. It's a tough one. It's disappointing. I really, really wanted him to succeed, but now I'm really wishing he'd have just stayed in the V-Carb, and we could have seen the talent that he has, which is a lot better than what we're seeing here. But his pace was absolutely horrendous. I know the car was incredibly tricky this weekend, but qualified dead last in the main race, of course. And then the reason it's a 2 for me is it's another clumsy crash where you'd almost, I know it's only going to be a 3 or a 4 when he's got no pace, but the fact that he's made another kind of error just kind of makes it more sort of embarrassingly bad to have these clumsy errors. And I'm not downgrading him for obviously like the fact that he had to keep serving his penalty, because that was on Red Bull, that were too eager to work on his car, I believe.
That was the case. The fans gave Yuki a 3 out of 10. Max Verstappen started the sprint in 6th, finished 4th, started the main race from the pit lane, finished 3rd.
I've gone for a 10 out of 10 for Max Verstappen, but it was actually surprisingly quite difficult to pick between a 9 and a 10. The reason why it's difficult was because the other sessions weren't good, but then he's put one of the greatest drives in ever, which means, in my personal opinion, I can't give him any less than a 10, even though I'd understand why people would, because he has just put in this unbelievable drive that I think only Max Verstappen can do. It's only the second time in history that someone's gone from the pit lane to the podium, and I will die on the hill forever that he should have stayed out and would have got an even better result, at the very least P2. He probably wouldn't have been able to hold Lando off, but you have to go for it in that situation. I know everyone has seemed to, a lot of comments I've seen on our posts and us chatting about it saying it's absolutely ridiculous, it was never on. Liam Lawson and saying like he's going to get a puncture, his tyre's going to explode. Liam Lawson did 52 laps on the mediums and managed to hold a train of the entire field behind him. So yeah, I will die on that hill forever that he should have stayed out for the rest of the race and at the very least bagged a PT.
Oh, that's very interesting. Oh, I have honestly been thinking about what grade I'm going to give Max for absolutely ages. I have to give him a 9 out of 10. I absolutely do. And this may well, set the comments on fire. 9 out of 10, by the way, may I remind you once again, is not a 4 out of 10. It's a 9. It's a close to perfection. But can I give him a perfect grade when, yes, he did also gain, I would say, from the VSC. Not gain, but obviously got an advantage from the VSC when he had that penalty puncture and was able to go onto the medium tyres. And I firmly believe that the strategy he was then on, which, yeah, he lost some time, of course, with that puncture and having to pit again, that strategy was perfect, to have two brand new mediums to go on the full attack. Red Bull would turn that car upside down into the fastest car, I would say, the fastest package at least, with Max behind the wheel, not taking anything away from him. But I can't give him a 10 because of everything else that happened in the weekend was by no means Max Verstappen level. Yeah, the Q1 exit as well. Like, how can I give him a 10? I get it. I totally get it from your side as well, Tommy. And if I was to ignore the sprint and not give as much weighting, or even ignore everything but the race is an 11 out of 10. It's the most difficult grade I've ever had to give. And also as well, let's quickly touch upon the fact of the strategy. I will also die on the hill that he should have stayed out. I get it. I get why people say, like, I'm going to sit back for a second, Tommy, because we're sitting forward and we're very tense. Let's sit back and just discuss this because, There's been a lot of comments, hasn't there, on our social media and on social media in general about Max's strategy. And I absolutely understand where people are coming from when it comes to, they went on the attack, they went on the soft tyres, and that was the best strategy to perhaps go on the attack. However, the reason why I think both myself and Tommy are on very similar opinions on the Max strategy call is that it is a win or bin scenario, in my opinion. It is, you're going for the Drivers' Championship. What does a third or a second? Yes, it goes down as one of the best drives ever. And Red Bull don't care about that. Max does not care about records like who can go from the pit lane to the highest position. He wants to win the Drivers' World Championship. And there was enough evidence, in my opinion, to suggest that there was at least a slim chance of getting his elbows out and making it difficult for Lando. There was, I think, 17 or so laps to go, and he pits from the lead with a 7-second buffer. I've seen people also say he's been pushing the mediums harder than Lando. It's not just the fact that he had it was only 7 laps difference between the tyres. McLaren are better on the tyres, yada, yada, yada. I don't care. That was the only way he won the race, was if he stayed out and made it difficult for Lando. Lando was doing 13.2s at the end of the race in clean air. Look at
the Lawson situation, and everyone stuck behind him. They were much faster. There were people stuck behind. And yes, Lando may have breezed past him, but another factor is if Lando was catching him, like half a second a lap, then it got to like 0.6. Even if Lando was a second a lap quicker than Max when he got behind him, we know that is difficult to pass this season with even a second advantage. And Lando, with the position he was in the championship and the history he's had with racing Max Verstappen, he does not go for anything other than a move that is 100% on. So I just think they had to risk it because it's literally, if he wins the race, and it was a long shot, but they have to try and win the race, because then equally, it goes down to, I think it'd be 29 points with 3 to go. But then it flips the other way, and even though it's only between first and third, it's massive at this stage of the season because it's now put him basically all but out of it because it's too big
now, isn't he? So look, we get your thoughts and
we'll never know
like
because
that.
It never happened.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But I do think it was incredibly close. That I really do think it would have worked better. I think it would have been P2.
All right, let's sit forward again. That was nice. I enjoyed that chat. The fans gave Max Verstappen a 10 out of 10. Please don't hurt me for giving him a 9. Let's move to Lewis Hamilton, who started the sprint in 11th, finished 7th, and started the main race in 13th. Did not finish. Oh dear. I'm going to go for a 4 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton. It was a poor weekend from Lewis. Didn't make it into Q3 in either qualifying session. And the biggest mistake here was just driving into the back of Colapinto. There was a complete misjudgment from Lewis, and it completely ruined his race. It was as if he's crashed into a wall, in my opinion, because his whole car is kaput. He's lost so much downforce and then has to retire the car through a fault that was his. I don't think Colapinto had any real part to play there. It's just Lewis to be pulling out of his slipstream earlier to go for the move. So not a good weekend from Lewis, and a couple of points in the sprint, of course, and had a great sprint start. But you look at that as a whole, you're in a Ferrari where your teammate is fighting for a podium and then gets wiped out. A 4 out of 10, I think, is fair.
I've gone for a 3 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton. An awful, awful weekend from him. He performed very poorly in both, qualifying sessions. A track like Brazil that you think he would do so well. Yes, he got some points in the sprint race, but, he had to fight back from a poor qualifying to only grab a couple of points. And then I cannot believe the error that he made. Am I watching Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest of all time, racing? It is so hard to watch because we know how talented he is. And it's just, an error that you'd expect from one of the newbies to make. It's such a shame because I do think there's been races this year where he's not been a million miles off Charles and it's not been as bad as everyone says, but you can understand why the pressure is being ramped up and questions are being asked when drives happen like this.
The fans gave Lewis Hamilton a 4 out of 10. Charles Leclerc started the sprint in 8th, finished 5th, started the main race in 3rd, did not finish.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc. Points in the sprint, a 5th place. And then in the main race, of course, I think he qualified absolutely brilliantly. Way ahead of his teammate. And then in the main race, wasn't his fault at all. You've said this many times in the race review and best reactions as well, that, it is the most Charles Leclerc thing ever that he is the one that's come out worse in that incident. I've seen hilarious, not if you're a Charles Leclerc fan, hilarious, but, people sharing a screenshot where Kimi Antonelli and Oscar Piastri are pretty much banging wheels. Charles nowhere near them. And it's guess who's the one that gets put out the race in this situation? He has no luck at all. He was basically at that moment about to sweep around the outside and go into P2. So I think, it's another very unlucky weekend, but I think he had great pace and was looking very impressive in the race before that.
Okay, I thought I was being a fanboy thinking of an 8, so I'd given a 7 initially, but now the fact you've given an 8 means that I'm flying through that door and giving an 8 as well. Charles Leclerc, he was on for a podium, could have even been a P2 after that move had he not been removed very aggressively from the Brazilian Grand Prix. As we've said many times, not his fault. He did absolutely everything on his part of going as wide as possible at turn 1 to allow for any shenanigans, and he still gets wiped out. But I think he's fully deserving of that. Ferrari were not that quick this weekend, and he was still able to do a qualifying performance for the main race that was not far away from being on the front row again. And he had provisional pole for a bit, and it was brilliant to watch. But sadly, was not able to convert into a podium because he had no front left tyre. The fans gave him a 7 out of 10. Oscar Piastri started the sprint in 3rd, did not finish. Started the main race in 4th. Finished 5th. I have gone for a 5 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. A devastating mistake in the sprint, which cost him a huge amount of points to his championship rival. And then in the main race as well, he has his part to play. He gets a penalty. However you sit on this, Kimi, of course, I think we're all in agreement, had his role as well in that, where he squeezes Oscar. However, Oscar, I still believe, is slightly more at fault for what went down. And he caused that carnage. He got a 10-second penalty and wasn't able to recover any higher than 5th place. So how can I give him any higher than a 5 out of 10 when his teammate has clean sweeped the entire weekend? So it's another poor weekend from Oscar. It's sad to see. I want to see him fighting at the front. He's been leading the championship for so long, and we've been so used to giving him 8s, 9s, 10s the entire year, but it is just falling off, and his championship hopes are going with it. He's almost a race win behind, and I don't see any way out of it currently.
Yeah, I gone for a 5 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. The fact that he's spun off on the sprint on his own is, goes without saying, but the last thing he needed when it looked like he'd qualified pretty well. And then in the main race, of course, clumsy again. I do think it was harsh because I saw it as a racing incident. But you do, you're putting that yourself in that situation. You could have very easily, got damage and been out of the race again, and then it really would be, championship over. His teammate has picked up 33 points and done an absolute clean sweep. And then Oscar's just coming home with a 5th place. It's absolutely just not good enough, is it, really, at all? And I think one of the most disappointing things was the fact that when he did, get through, because of course was in 2nd place at one point, and within DRS on that kind of restart, you kind of thought, okay, Oscar, let's see what you can do now. This is your moment. And he just dropped further and further back. And it's so disappointing because I want to believe that we'll see the old Oscar again based on what we saw at the start of the season. And I think even just as we saw, like what he managed to do when he was 2nd behind Lando, just unfortunately doesn't give me any confidence that he's going to be able to take this fight to Lando. And that is a real shame because we want to see it.
A huge shame. We want to see it go down to the wire, and I firmly believe Lando's going to win with at least a race to go now. So that is the way we're going with the championship at the moment. The fans gave Oscar Piastri a 6 out of 10. Lando Norris started the sprint in 1st, finished 1st, started the main race in 1st, finished 1st.
I've gone for a 10 out of 10. What?
Never knew that.
Unbelievable. The only error he made all weekend was the kind of first run in Q3. But, when the pressure was on, he delivered a brilliant qualifying lap. His starts were fantastic. His safety car restarts were fantastic, something that we've criticised a lot on driver ratings before. And he's just easily just on the best form of his life on his way to the World Championship now. It's unbelievable what he's doing, and just such a good time in his career to do it.
I have unsurprisingly gone for a 10 out of 10 as well for Lando. What a couple of weekends he has had. Mexico and now this. This is a champion in waiting for sure. He is outperforming his teammate by not even a small margin, quite frankly, a country mile at the moment when it counts. This could easily be a moment where both Lando and Oscar start to get a little bit shaky with the fact that they are fighting for their first world championship. And Lando, who has previously been questioned how does he deal with pressure, at the utmost amount of pressure there could possibly be at the end of a season, he is delivering to a level with which we may have never seen. So in terms of Lando's, not never.
Yeah, I was going to say,
in terms of Lando's performances, I think this is the best he's ever driven.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Yeah, phenomenal work from Lando, fully deserving of a 10 out of 10. And if he keeps driving like this, he will be world champion. Absolutely. The fans gave him a 10 as well. So finally, who is our P1? Well, my P1 can't be Max Verstappen because I gave him a 9, which is going to go down really well. I am going to give it to Lando Norris because Lando Norris is fully deserving of that clean sweep, and such a huge weekend from him to essentially all but claim the championship with a 23-point swing compared to his teammate Oscar. It has to be Lando being my P1.
Yeah, has to be Lando as well. It's over the whole weekend. Max drove one of the best races we've ever seen in the main race. Kimi Antonelli drove the best race of his career as well. But Lando, yes, he's got a great car underneath him, but he's just delivered absolutely perfectly under, different amounts of pressure throughout the race, throughout the weekend. Him leading the championship, how's it going to go? And he just looked absolutely unstoppable. So it's got to be Lando.
Congratulations to Lando Norris, who of course gets both of our P1s and may well be P1 in the championship come the end of the year. Thank you everybody for tuning in to this very chaotic driver ratings. Please leave us your love, your support, your positivity, and why you love this driver ratings episode. Leave us a like as well on YouTube. I'm putting a big old thumb right on the screen right there. That's what it looks like. Okay, one of those.
Click
if you
that
enjoy
button.
this, and that one is if you don't like the content, not if you don't like a particular grade because you think it's one above or below. So there you go. Tommy, what's your final thoughts?
Final thoughts are roll on Vegas, because I think this one is going to be, the championship may all well be wrapped up, but I think Vegas could surprise with different results and things, so I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, predictions is going to be a busy one, I think.
Yes, I think so.
And look forward to the Las Vegas watch-alongs, because it'll be 4 a.m. local time where we are. So I'm going to have some coffee in me, I think, for that one. So look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you, as always, for watching and listening, and we'll see you very soon. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.